News now projects Raphael Warnock as the winner in the special Georgia Senate election tonight. Raphael Warnock, the projected winner, beating incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler with a, at this point, 36,000 vote margin. The votes are still now up to 40,000. The votes are still being counted in Georgia. Raphael Warnock is building that lead. Let's go straight to Steve Kornacki at the big board with the latest numbers. Steve Kornacki, what do we have?
All right, Lauren, so what just happened that caused this race to be called for Raphael Warnock? And you can see the official call on our screen. We got another batch of votes from DeKalb County. We've been talking about DeKalb County. We didn't get all of the outstanding vote, but we got about 6,000 more votes. Remember, there were about 18,000 outstanding, so about a third of the remaining vote in DeKalb County, overwhelmingly Democratic DeKalb County, just came in. Warnock won 91% of the new vote that just came in, so extremely Democratic vote that just came in. What that does to Warnock's lead statewide is it pushes it over 40,000. It pushes it to a full point. Again, still more than 10,000 votes to come in DeKalb County. You can see the dramatic effect that these updates from DeKalb County are having. So Warnock still, there is vote to come from DeKalb County that will push that lead out further for him. There is still, as we said, 7,500 mail ballots to come from Fulton County. We expect that to also benefit Warnock, potentially votes in Chatham County, Savannah, the opportunity for him to build that lead north of 50,000 and putting it into a place, Lawrence, we were talking about this a little earlier, the decision desk is looking for, does a candidate get to a place where there just is no realistic way that the opponent, the trailing candidate, can get back in it? And Warnock is putting this race in a position now where there's not a realistic path for Kelly Loeffler, and also he's clear critically, 50.5 to 49.5, a full point ahead. He seems clear right now of that 0.5% threshold that could trigger a runoff. If the margin between these two candidates was a half a point or less, that's recount territory. It's a full point, and again, growing. It's a full point and growing. That is why Raphael Warnock is now projected by NBC News to be the next United States Senator from Georgia. How about the other race? That same update from DeKalb County has changed the leaderboard in the other Senate race. Jon Ossoff has taken the lead over David Perdue because of that big batch of votes we just got out of DeKalb County. The lead for Jon Ossoff now statewide in Georgia sits at 3,560 votes. Again, it was the exact same story in the Ossoff-Perdue race. We got a third of the remaining vote, a third of the outstanding vote in heavily Democratic DeKalb County. 90%, more than 90% of the vote that just came in was for Ossoff. It vaulted him into a lead over David Perdue. We have been tracking this all night. Ossoff has been right on Perdue's heels for hours right now. We said we expected when he got that DeKalb vote, he was going to have a shot to take the lead. He has taken the lead. Now, this is where it's important. What I was just talking about with Warnock and the possibility for Warnock to really put that over 50,000 potentially, the possibility exists here for Ossoff now to expand on this lead because, again, what we just got, I'll call it up on the screen here, what we just got from DeKalb County was a chunk of the remaining vote in DeKalb County, but it was not all of the remaining vote. It was about a third of the remaining vote. So again, there is still, this is early vote, it looks like it's about 90% Democratic. There are still plenty of more votes to come from DeKalb County that Jon Ossoff, you expect to win overwhelmingly. He just gained, nearly about 4,500 votes. The margin just changed about 4,500 votes, nearly 5,000 votes. That could, with these further updates from DeKalb County, that he could climb up to 10,000. He could climb over 10,000, maybe significantly over 10,000 with what is still to come from DeKalb County. On top of that, again, 7,500 mail ballots to come from Fulton County. Not going to get them till tomorrow. Not going to have the numbers released till tomorrow afternoon, but 7,500 mail ballots. Vote by mail is heavily Democratic generally. Fulton is heavily Democratic. Again, you expect from that 7,500, Ossoff will continue to build the lead. So he could get that well north of 10,000 with what's left in DeKalb. He could add further to it with what we get out of Fulton County when they release those mail votes tomorrow. Also, Chatham County, where Savannah is, we think there are a couple thousand votes there as well. So again, the opportunity for Jon Ossoff, I think one number that might be interesting to keep in mind here, Lawrence, is you mentioned this before. Joe Biden's winning margin in the state of Georgia over Donald Trump last November was a hair under 12,000 votes. And maybe use that as a bit of a marker here as you watch the remaining vote come in from DeKalb, from Fulton. Is Ossoff going to get above that Biden margin from last November? If so, how significantly is he going to move above that margin here? So again, opportunity here for Ossoff now to build some kind of a lead with the vote that's yet to come. And again, for Warnock, I pressed the wrong button there, but for Raphael Warnock, he's now trying to just run. I'm in Alabama. I don't know what the heck I'm doing here, Lawrence. For Raphael Warnock, he could just run away from Kelly Loeffler now. He's the winner. And just the question here is, how high is that margin going to get for Warnock?
Steve, thank you for that important update, the most important update of the night so far. And so there we have it. History made in Georgia tonight. NBC News is projecting that Raphael Warnock is the winner in the Senate election in Georgia, beating incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler, now 40,000 votes ahead of Senator Loeffler. We are joined now by Jonathan Alter, David Jolly, Christina Greer to continue our conversation. And Christina Greer, this is history made in Georgia tonight.
It is. And, I'm cautiously optimistic. I like to celebrate when things are certified. But we do know that this country has a long history of excluding Black voters and also Black people from the political process. So when we think about Reverend Warnock, or soon to be Senator Reverend Dr.-elect Warnock, I'm not too sure of the order of things, following in a long tradition, but I hope it does set a tone and a pace for other Black candidates to be elected statewide. We've never been able to get a Black female governor elected in the history of the United States. Hopefully that'll change in 2022. We've only had 2 Black female senators ever elected. So I think a lot of people are inspired tonight, and not just Black Americans.
David Jolly, your thoughts on the history made in this hour?
Look, remarkable that the Deep South has now elevated an African-American senator. We should all celebrate that. I think the big question for me, Lawrence, coming out of this, it appears Ossoff likely could win. Where does that leave our politics? It's easy to say Donald Trump has left the party in tatters, having lost the midterm elections in the House, having lost the Senate, and now the presidency. But Republicans would tell you, hey, we had a higher turnout than ever. The Senate's still 50-50, and we won seats in the House. What does that mean for Biden and Democrats governing in Washington? Do they go bold? Do they try to dial it back, facing the headwinds of what would be historic trends in midterms that would work against Democrats? I don't know where our politics sit tonight, but it's a big night for Democrats.
Jonathan Alter, Kelly Loeffler will be on the Senate floor tomorrow as a defeated senator voting against democracy in America on the Senate floor tomorrow.
Yes, a member of the Sedition Caucus. So we do need now to focus on this, because they cannot, in the years ahead, go unpunished, or they will challenge and litigate every future election if they think they can get away with it. So I think we need to establish the lunacy of what these folks are arguing. Lawrence, I like to use a prop that I hope people will get accustomed to, some scissors, because what they're basically saying is clip off the top of the ballot where Joe Biden won, discount that, but the bottom of the ballot where I won, that counts. That's completely idiotic, anti-democratic, and dangerous. And the Republicans are going to be arguing for that tomorrow, and they must be confronted on that, and we must restore our democracy in the next few years.
Jonathan Alter, Christina Greer, David Jolly, thank you for joining our discussion tonight. The news of this hour, the historic news of this hour, NBC News is projecting that Raphael Warnock has won his Senate election in Georgia tonight. We will continue our live coverage of the Georgia Senate elections all night. Steve Kornacki is not going anywhere. He has pledged not to leave the building until we have results. My colleague Ali Velshi will pick up our coverage after this break.
Good morning to you. I'm Ali Kelly Velshi at MSNBC headquarters in New York. It is 2 a.m. in Atlanta, and the Democrats are on the brink of retaking control of the United States Senate for the first time in 6 years, which could help President-elect Joe Biden as he seeks to enact his agenda. Moments ago, NBC News projected that the Reverend Raphael Warnock has won the seat that Republican Kelly Loeffler was appointed to just 1 year ago. Here's what Warnock had to say a short time ago about his victory.
May my story be an inspiration to some young person who is trying to grasp and grab hold of the American dream. And so, Georgia, I am honored by the faith that you have shown in me. And I promise you this tonight. I am going to the Senate to work for all of Georgia.
The race between Warnock and Loeffler has been decided. NBC News says the race between Democrat Jon Ossoff and Republican Senator David Perdue remains too close to call. Ossoff has taken a slight lead, and his campaign has issued a statement essentially declaring victory. Nearly all of the vote is now in, a far cry from November, where it took more than a week to count all of the votes. The Georgia Secretary of State's office says there have been no reports of major issues with voting. So I want to get started with a look at the very latest results from Georgia, and you all know what that means. I almost feel like not having to say it. Here we go. The one and only Steve Kornacki at the big board. Sir, take it away.
Well, Allie, we've been telling a story all night about, Warnock getting the lead. It feels, 3-4 hours ago, something like that, and then slowly building a lead. And we knew that what was going to happen sometime in these overnight hours was we were going to get a significant update from right here in DeKalb County, just outside. Actually, some of Atlanta is in DeKalb County, Atlanta, and just outside Atlanta. Overwhelmingly Democratic county. So they had, as of about 10 minutes ago, there were about 20,000 votes left to be counted in this county. We got about 6,000 of them in, and Warnock won 91% of them. Ossoff also won 91% of them. I mean, this is just an overwhelmingly Democratic county. And so that just pushed the Warnock lead up to a full point statewide, over 40,000 votes. It just reached the point where there's no conceivable way that Kelly Loeffler is going to catch Raphael Warnock. And also, Warnock is going to be clear. We can show you on the statewide result here, is going to be clear, it looks like, of that recall. But, I say recall, recount. If you're within half a point statewide, there could be a recount. It's now up to a full point. There are still votes left to be counted, reported out in DeKalb County, maybe coming overnight. Any votes that come out of DeKalb County still, and there's more than 10,000 of them, are only going to pad Warnock's lead over Loeffler. Also, in the other race you mentioned, it vaulted, that update from DeKalb County, it vaulted Jon Ossoff ahead of David Perdue. Now a 3,560 vote lead for Ossoff over Perdue. And this is where it gets critical. We know Warnock has won the first race. The only question there is the margin. What about this one? Where is this race going from here? Ossoff finally has the lead. Well, again, DeKalb County, probably about 12,000 votes left to come in DeKalb County. We're expecting them to be probably like we just saw, probably something like 90% Democratic. So it is a reasonable expectation that when all of the vote comes in from DeKalb County, again, it may be happening sometime in these overnight hours, that Ossoff margin from the vote just in DeKalb County can climb over 10,000 votes statewide, maybe over about 12,000 votes statewide. Where else are we still waiting on votes in Georgia? The other big source of it is right next door. There's DeKalb here and there's Fulton here. This is Atlanta area. This is the biggest county in the state. They have all of the votes that were cast in person on Election Day are counted. All of the early votes are counted. The only thing left in Fulton County are 7,500 mail ballots. And they are, we talked to election officials there in the last hour. They told us they are not going to be released. The numbers from those 7,500 mail ballots will not be released until likely tomorrow afternoon. Right? I say tomorrow, I guess later today afternoon. So it is going to be a while till those votes get reported out. But we know what they are. They are mail ballots in an overwhelmingly Democratic county. You can certainly expect these are going to be a heavily Democratic group of votes. So between what is still to come in DeKalb County, about 12,000 votes there in DeKalb, overwhelmingly Democratic, 7,500 mail ballots in Fulton County, heavily Democratic. You can certainly see Jon Ossoff Ossoff building the statewide lead that now sits at 35-60. You could certainly see him building that 15,000, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. One other place where we think there might be some outstanding mail ballots is down by Savannah. Maybe again, Ossoff could add another 1,000 or so there. But that's, but the name of the game for Ossoff now is just to try to get that margin up as much as he can. Is he going to end up over Perdue? Is he going to end up less than half a point ahead? If he does indeed end up ahead, is it going to be less than half a point ahead? Keep that in mind, because anything inside of a half a point, you can have the recount. So that could happen. So we want to see, there's certainly momentum here for Ossoff to build on this. Does he build it enough to get out of that half a point zone? I think that's maybe some of the suspense right now. But you just look at what's left. You look at what we just saw happen in DeKalb. You can kind of forecast, Allie, where this is going in this race. You can see where Ossoff is going to build on this. The question is when. Are we going to get more DeKalb County votes overnight tonight? Is that not going to be till tomorrow? And again, we know that big batch of votes, 7,500 of them in Fulton. Yeah. We know that's not till tomorrow afternoon.
So let's talk about this a little Kornacki math. About 49,000 votes in total outstanding in Georgia. But let's just go to DeKalb County for a second. Your guess, roughly 12,000 votes remaining there. The split we've seen so far has been about 90% Democrat to about 10% Republican. So if it's 12,000 votes outstanding, we call that about 10,800 for Ossoff, about 1,200 for Perdue. You subtract one from the other, it gives Ossoff a net 9,600. He's got 3,500. So that puts him up about 1,300 in DeKalb County alone. But because this is so tight, and because there are 49,000 votes somewhere outstanding in Georgia, does that put us into the category at that point, once we get those final votes from DeKalb, to be able to make a call that John Ossoff has this race?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to, I always caution, and people are probably sick of it, I don't want to speak for the decision desk, but I think, there is DeKalb. As I say, there's Fulton, there's Savannah, and I can remember there was, you think back to Pennsylvania. Remember Pennsylvania in November? It seemed the decision desk wanted to see Joe Biden not just get ahead of Trump in the statewide count in Pennsylvania. What triggered that call eventually was that Biden got half a point ahead of Trump. It was 0.5%. And then that was sort of the decision desk here and elsewhere, because all of the decision desks from different networks basically called the presidential race at the same point. That 0.5%, when Biden got ahead 0.5, and it was clear the only stuff to come was only going to add to that, that's when the trigger was pulled. So you've got right now statewide Ossoff just inching into the lead right now, 3,500. Again, if you extrapolate like you just did what's to come from DeKalb, okay, maybe he's sitting at about a 13,000 vote lead. It's still, in the grand scheme of things, relatively narrow. Remember, Biden's margin in the state was about 12,000. So Ossoff's margin would resemble Biden's margin. That would be in the recount zone potentially. So yeah, I think you might be a little closer than we've seen in some of these other places.
So
but again, it's if you see where it's going.
Do you have everything you're pointing to where we're still looking for ballots seem to be places where the balloting is skewing toward Democrats? There were, I know, at least an hour and a half ago, you were looking at some counties that were not particularly large. Right. There's some counties in northern Georgia and others where we were still expecting votes that would skew Republican. Are we still looking for those?
Yeah, so what's left, basically, I'm giving you the biggest places that we're aware of that are left. DeKalb, Fulton, and Chatham County down by Savannah. Now, there may be a scattering of mail votes from, and we're trying to get an accounting of this, there may be a small scattering of mail votes from some of these, a lot of them are red counties, Republican counties. The mail vote, though, Republicans are doing really well with the same-day vote. The people that turned out and voted today, that's where the Republicans are running up big numbers. Even in these red counties, we're seeing, mail votes get reported out in some of these red counties where the Democrats are actually getting more votes in the mail vote. So you don't really see a huge source of Republican votes
mail,
left
you
here.
Mean postal.
Yes, right. Yes, U.S. mail votes. So, look, it's these three that we're talking about plus 17,000 military votes. That's not something that's going to get done tonight. Plus a certain number of provisional ballots. And these are, it's going to take a few days before they go through to provisional ballots. How many of those are there? There were 10,000 in November. It'll be short of that, we think, Let's say maybe 8,000. That seems a reasonable guess. The provisional ballots, we saw them break 2-1 for the Democrats back in November. It's a pretty good rule of thumb for these things. So there's a group of about 8,000 provisional ballots we think will go overwhelmingly heavily Democratic. There's these 3 counties where we think Democrats are positioned to do very well with what's left. And there are 17,000 military ballots. And Georgia does not release the results specifically of the military ballots. But again, I think, look, if you're putting the military ballots together with the provisional ballots, I think that's probably worst case for Democrats. There's a wash.
Right. Okay, Steve, we're going to stay close to you. What are you expecting? Do you know what we're getting in the next hour or two?
I am glued to every report you've had on from Priscilla Thompson, because I know she's there in DeKalb County, and I'm as eager as anybody to hear what she's hearing, because look, we know we're not getting Fulton tonight. We know we're not getting anything else from Chatham County tonight, because we know the officials there have gone home. So if we're getting anything more substantial tonight, it's going to be from DeKalb County. It's going to be that 12,000 or so votes outstanding there. Clearly, this is an 85-90% Democratic vote that's left there. Are we getting another update? Are we going to get most all of it tonight, or is that going to be sometime tomorrow? That seems to be the overnight drama here, I would say.
We're going to be talking to Priscilla in just a couple of minutes, but she was reporting that there was a technical glitch with one of their memory cards, so that they're scanning 19,000 ballots manually. That process is ongoing. They hope to have them done tonight. Do you believe that group of votes you just got from DeKalb includes that, or is that separate?
Yeah, I believe what we just got was a portion of that 19. I think we got about a third of that 19,000. Right. So when I'm saying about 12,000 left, my understanding of it is
that
we got a chunk of it, but not about a third of it.
Okay, don't go far. I know that's not really a problem for you, but do not go far. Steve Kornacki, we're going to need to talk a lot over the next few hours. Steve Kornacki staying with me here in the studio at 30 Rock as we finish this off. I've made some determination to try and end this before I get off the air tonight. Joining me now, I might have just cursed it, by the way. Joining me now is David Korn. He's the Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones. Olivia, News East Washington correspondent for New York Magazine. Kurt Bardella, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. Welcome to all 3 of you to this remarkably exciting night. Usually when they tell you need to be on TV at 2 in the morning, you think you're doing the graveyard shift. There's nothing graveyardy about it tonight. We are looking for the end of this thing. Olivia, to you, what do you make of what you've seen so far tonight?
One of the most interesting things to me so far is that some areas where there is typically high Republican turnout that went very heavily for the president during the general election have had lower turnout or had lower turnout on Tuesday. And to me, I mean, this is kind of a repeat of the same problem that Trump had on election day, where when you spend months talking about an election being rigged, talking about it being unfair, the result might be that you depress turnout among your most loyal supporters who hang on your every word and believe everything you have to say. And it also says to me that even though people might believe Donald Trump, even though they might come out to a rally for him, as they did this week, it doesn't mean that they're going to do what he says. And I think that going forward into a post-Trump era, it's instructive to look at the results here, look at enthusiasm from the president's base, and apply it to how seriously we should take him and his family and MAGA politicians in the future.
David, I have to tell you, we have seen this week, and I'm curious because Donald Trump just went to Georgia last night to campaign for these Republicans, and it's not clear, if you look at the numbers as to where it was, it's not clear that he actually helped. And writ large, it's not clear that the things he's been up to in the last couple of weeks, the fighting of the election, the declaring of the actual runoffs, which have just taken place tonight as illegitimate ahead of the time, and then that remarkable recording with Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State for Georgia. At some juncture, one wonders how this ever helps Donald Trump and whether it actually did in this case.
Well, nothing's helped Donald Trump. He lost the election. He lost the election largely because he refused to manage the pandemic effectively, as you've well covered throughout the year, and he has become a candidate of delusions. I mean, last night when he was in Georgia, it was not talking about the assets and the wonderful qualities of the Republican candidates who are on the ballot today. He was talking about delusional conspiracy theories and allegations of fraud that are baseless. And yeah, that works with his base, right? But what we've seen in Georgia, what we saw in the Biden victory there, what we've seen after 10 years of Stacey Abrams organizing on the ground, is that base, gets Trump a long way, gets the Republican Party a long way, but it also, what appeals to it is turning off people in the suburbs, and also motivating other people to come out and vote. It's a double whammy that Trump has. So he talks about these great crowds he has, but that's kind of it. The people who are with him are very enthusiastic about him, not about the Republican Party or anyone else. And he thinks that's how you win a ball game, but it really isn't. You got to put points on the board, and he can't do anything other than focus ultimately on his own grievances and his own psychological need for a narrative that shows he didn't lose. And that didn't get enough, Georgia Republican voters to the polls. And it's amazing what the turnout was. It was pretty high, close to the general election turnout. And both Ossoff and Warnock did better than they did last time out. They got more votes in a lot of ways. So Trump hurt himself, hurt the party, and he's going to continue to do this tomorrow, the next 3 weeks, and probably in the next 3 years.
Kurt Bardella, former Republican, talk to me about what happened here in Georgia. This sort of long stopped being a Republican versus Democrat thing in Georgia. It became a referendum on everything that was going on the Senate, on federal politics, on Perdue and Loeffler, who are the richest senators. They're two of the richest senators a lot. Loeffler is in a whole different field of her own. She's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They were involved in stock trading. This was not a battle of ideology, Democratic versus liberal ideology, or conservative versus liberal ideology.
Yeah, well, and I think this is really the first time I can think of in my lifetime, certainly, where the platform that the Republican candidates ran on was one of against democracy. And the one thing that we knew from a messaging standpoint for both Loeffler and Perdue was that the litmus test seemed to be, do you believe that Joe Biden won the election or not? And over and over and over again, they refused to acknowledge that reality. And David was right that this was a campaign about conspiracy theories. And as it turns out, the combination of running a campaign based solely on pure folly, fiction, conspiracy theories, running a campaign solely on the idea of undermining the democratic process is not a winning formula. And I hope that all of the Republicans who are going to consider what they're going to do today in deciding whether they're going to object to the Electoral College proceedings in the Congress, I hope they take a good look at what's happening right now, because the voters did not respond to this. And this wasn't some left-wing liberal state here. This is Georgia. And when you can't get Georgia to come with you on that message, the Sedition Caucus, the Jim Crow Caucus, they need to take a deep look at what happened here, because they are setting up the Republican Party for electoral failure after electoral failure if they keep going down this road. When you look at the coalition that has led to these apparent victories tonight, you have amazing turnout from African Americans in Georgia. You have depressed turnout from Republicans. That is an unsustainable formula for the Republican Party to continue, and for the party having it split down the middle, where one side acknowledges reality and the other side doesn't. That's irreconcilable. That is an unsustainable path forward, and Republicans need to really reevaluate what their strategy is going forward. Because I'll tell you, when they cast those votes today, in Congress, in the House and Senate, and whether they object to the Biden certification or not, that is doubling down on failure if they proceed with that plan.
Olivia Nuzzi, 10 hours, less than 10 hours to when this thing, I don't even know what you call it anymore, starts in the United States Congress. It used to be a thing, we didn't even have a name for it, because it used to be a thing that nobody paid any attention to. It is this pro forma thing, literally, where they count the Electoral College votes that have been cast, and the vice president signs it, and that's the end of it. Most Americans didn't know this even happened. But it's 10 hours to this. There are 12 or more Republican senators who are in some fashion or other going to try and stand in the way of the certification of the election of Joe Biden. We're not quite sure what Mike Pence is going to do about this. Does tonight's result have any impact on what happens tomorrow?
Well, as you were saying, a lot of Americans probably were not aware of this formality previously. So if there is an upside to the president attempting to subvert democracy, perhaps it's a civics lesson, and we're all getting to learn about aspects of the process that we might not have otherwise paid attention to. But as to whether or not this affects things, I think perhaps it'll be an indication to Republicans who haven't made up their minds yet, or who maybe were on the fence about trying to support this attempted, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not going to be a reversal of what happened on Election Day. Maybe they will think twice in light of these results. But this has all been just symbolic. And so I don't really think that there's going to be a big change. And I don't think that the president is going to wake up in the morning, or he's watching television right now, and say, oh, I guess this is it. I guess this is a bad indication for me. He is who he is. He's trying to keep his options open. He is looking ahead to what's next for Donald Trump. He obviously has never had any real interest in governing. He's barely had any interest in the party in general, or in any down ballot races. We heard on that call that he sounded, if anything, quite frustrated that Republicans had had success across the board, but that he had not been reelected. And I think a lot of Republicans have miscalculated what the future is going to look like, where they think that they are going to be able to continue to appeal to the president's base and benefit from that. But in a post-Trump world, when him and his keyboard are further and further removed from the levers of power, I think it's going to be not quite as important to avoid becoming the subject of an angry presidential tweet. And I think that there will be a reckoning of sorts, and Republicans looking back with regret and perhaps embarrassment, and they should, over how they've indicated that they're going to behave during Wednesday's ceremony, I guess we're calling it.
It is kind of incredible. And I see Steve, from the corner of my eye, I see Steve Kornacki heading back toward the big board. I'm going to take a guess there that means he may have some information. Do you, Steve?
I do. I don't.
He doesn't have a mic. Kornacki, he took his mic off. I didn't even know that happens. I didn't know. I thought Steve had one of those mics that's just sort of somehow in his aura or in his glasses or something like that. We're going to get a mic on Steve because Steve's actually in the house. Go ahead and take a look. Take a shot of that. This is how the magic happens over here. Steve Kornacki. I sort of thought that Steve just sort of talks and it gets on TV, but there's actually a microphone he's about to put on. He's going to give us a little more information. I will tell you before Steve gets on here what we're looking at. We have about 97%, 98% of the vote in Georgia. If you look at it that way, there's still about 49,000 votes outstanding somewhere in Georgia. Some of them are mail ballots. Some of them are provisional ballots that were cast before the elections. Some of them are military ballots, about 17,000 of them. And we keep on hearing from some counties who are saying they're coming in, they're doing some work tonight, they're doing some work overnight, some tomorrow. This is the race we're looking at. Ossoff and Perdue. We already called the Warnock race. Reverend Raphael Warnock has defeated Senator Kelly Loeffler, but we are still in a tight race with Ossoff and Perdue. You can see there that John Ossoff has the lead in there, 50.1% to 49.9%, a difference of about 9,500 votes. Now, we are still in just one county in the Atlanta area. Remember, in Atlanta, there are 8 or 9 counties right in the Atlanta metropolitan area, heavily populated, heavily Democratic. In one of those counties, DeKalb County, we are expecting probably another 12,000 votes before we're done there. And those votes are breaking about 90% Democratic to about 10% Republican. So we expect in that county and in other areas around Athens, around Savannah, there are things to come in. But this is DeKalb County. This is what we're looking at. Breaking 83-17 at the moment. Let's see what Steve Kornacki has now that he's got his mic.
Sorry about that, Ali. I apologize. Yes. So, I mean, Statewide, this is a key development. John Ossoff took the lead the last time we got an update from DeKalb County. Now John Ossoff is building on that lead. You can see it was about 3,000 in the last update. Now it's up, getting close to 10,000 votes. So again, getting more in from DeKalb County, working our way towards all of those. It's the early vote. That is what has been outstanding here in DeKalb County for some time now. The votes that were cast in person at polling places, but before Election Day, a week before, 2 weeks before, they have that early voting period. You heard a lot about it. Democrats were excited about the turnout numbers they were getting. Well, in DeKalb County, they are still releasing the votes that were cast, the totals from the votes that were cast in that early voting period. That's the outstanding piece of business in DeKalb County. And again, we said with each update you're going to get from DeKalb County, that Ossoff advantage statewide is going to grow. So now it's approaching 10,000 votes. And again, you can just compare that. Warnock's lead, meanwhile, is going to start approaching 50,000 votes statewide over Loeffler. We know Warnock's won. Here's Ossoff. Again, he's building a lead. The margin here for Joe Biden won this state in November over Donald Trump. Joe Biden's margin was just shy of 12,000 votes. So John Ossoff is now within about 3,000 votes in his margin, about 2,000 votes in his margin of where Joe Biden finished in the state when he won it. And again, there are still, you can expect what you just saw twice in the last 20 minutes. You can expect another batch from DeKalb County that will push that higher for Ossoff. You can expect probably tomorrow afternoon another batch from Fulton County that would push it higher still. And then we believe there's a couple thousand votes down by Savannah, mail votes, Democratic County, mail-in ballot votes. So you can expect, again, that's going to pad it further. This Ossoff lead really does look like it's going to be significantly above where Joe Biden finished in this state back in November. So again, when you get through everything I'm just describing, a couple days from now, there's still the issue of provisional ballots, still the issue of military ballots. Again, worst case for Democrats, those probably work out to a wash, but those are some other votes to keep in mind. And I think the bottom line you got to be thinking about here is how big is Ossoff's advantage over Perdue going to be when all of the votes are counted? And I say that because, look, it is right now 50.1 to 49.9, 0.2%. In Georgia, anything inside of half a percent, anything inside of 0.5%, 0.5 inside of that's recount territory. So Ossoff's got it up to 0.2 right now, and the opportunity to build it. Can he get it up? Can he get it out of that recount zone? I think that's one of the other questions right here. Or does it stay there, and then, when all the votes are counted, you got to go through the whole recount process as well. But it really is looking like this is just a question of how high, with the vote we know is outstanding, how high does Ossoff build that lead?
Let me ask you this. In the general election on November 6th, November 3rd, Perdue outperformed Donald Trump in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And at this rate, he's not.
No, and this race here, Perdue versus Ossoff was essentially a one-on-one race back in November. As a libertarian candidate that got a very, very small amount of the vote, ended up keeping each candidate under 50%. That's why we're in a runoff. David Perdue got 49.7%. Back in the preliminary election, he's at 49.9, but the difference was Perdue, back in November, got 88,000 more votes than Ossoff. Ossoff lagged Biden. Perdue outperformed Trump. That was one of the reasons Republicans came into these runoffs so confident in Georgia was, yes, Joe Biden won the state. He beat Donald Trump in Georgia. But Republicans could say, and did say for the last 2 months, Perdue got more votes than Ossoff. Biden won the state by 12,000, but Perdue got 88,000 more votes than Ossoff. And then if you looked at that other race here that turned into, how does this selected? When you look at the other race here, Warnock versus Loeffler, if you added up all the Democrats, all the Republicans back in November in that wide open primary, there were more Republican votes. So Republicans were very confident. They said, well, Trump may not be able to win the state, but a Republican Senate candidate can win the state. And you see, Ossoff has improved significantly over what he did back in November. And Warnock not only has consolidated the Democratic vote that existed in his race back in November, he's built on it.
Keep it on the Warnock-Loeffler race and take me to Chatham County, if you would, please. Chatham County is Savannah. The reason this is interesting is not just that there may be some votes outstanding. You can tell us if there are. Raphael Warnock is a son of Savannah.
And we do think there are outstanding votes here. We know that the election officials in Chatham County are done for the night. We believe our decision desk does that there's about 3,000 mail-in ballots, still to be counted in Chatham County. And yeah, you can see, it's a little bit more than half a point, but Warnock right now is running better than Biden did. Slightly, but he is running better than Biden did in Chatham County. And again, with a little bit of mail vote left to come, that's usually the strongest vote that Democrats have. So I think there's the opportunity, certainly, for Warnock in Chatham County to push that vote a little higher. For that matter, there's the opportunity, again, for Ossoff to do the same. So again, any votes that come in, any mail votes that come in from Chatham County, tomorrow, and it would be tomorrow, I think this would happen, are going to favor the Democrats and are going to pad. Each one's leading now. They will lead by more when those votes are counted.
And when you look at the difference in performance right now between Ossoff and Warnock, part of that is, I was pointing out that Warnock is from Savannah. It was 156 years ago that William Sherman went into Savannah, and it was the beginning of the end of the Civil War. Georgia has not had a black senator ever. There have only been 3, I think, black senators from the South, and he will be the 11th black senator in all of U.S. history. So there's a certain wind in his sails that is a little bit different than John Ossoff's.
And I think one of the things we're going to talk about, Allie, too, is the ingredients that went into Warnock winning and potentially Ossoff winning, potentially Democrats sweeping this. Yet Warnock consistently has run about a half a point above Ossoff. It's 50.1 for Ossoff right now, 50.5 for Warnock, 0.4 of 1 point. And again, we've been trying to look at this. Is there a geographical component? Is it a certain part of the state? It's been pretty consistent, has been what I think I've been seeing here. County after county, Warnock is just doing a little bit better than Ossoff did. Is that about Warnock and Ossoff? Is it about voters perceiving some kind of a difference there? Is it about Perdue and Loeffler? Is it just some voters just perhaps like Perdue as a candidate a little bit more than they like Loeffler as a candidate? Maybe that's the way to look at it. But whatever it is, Warnock is running a little bit ahead of Ossoff in this. And I think one of the most striking things when I say things we'll be discussing in the aftermath of these elections is we heard from Democrats for the last few weeks as this early voting period took shape that they believed they had found new voters who hadn't participated in the November election, specifically African-American voters. They believed they were going to do better, turn out more black voters, particularly in sort of a band of rural counties, a lot of rural counties here, outside of Columbus, Albany, Georgia's down here, southwest Georgia, a lot of counties down here, and kind of a band stretching across, south and east of Macon all the way up to the Augusta area. They thought in the early voting, and they were saying, we found new voters, new black voters who are turning out for this runoff. And we weren't sure coming into today, is that real or not? And one of the stories we saw tonight in these heavily black, largely black rural counties, we saw Democrats doing better. We saw Warnock and Ossoff both doing better than Biden had back in November. And we saw turnout. When you were looking at the turnout compared to the November election, it was holding up better in a lot of these counties I'm describing than other counties, particularly in the core Republican part of the state. So I think, it looks, my first read of this is, there is something to what Democrats were saying about black voters, not in the Atlanta metro area. We talk about black voters around there. Black voters in rural areas of the state, bringing out bigger numbers there for Democrats than we saw back in November. That's a key ingredient when you're talking about races this close.
Steve, don't go far, because I think we're going to get some more numbers in there, and we are very close in this state. NBC has called the race for Raphael Warnock, having defeated Senator Kelly Loeffler in Georgia. We have not made a call as it relates to the Ossoff-Perdue race. It is close. John Ossoff is leading at the moment, and his lead in the last new results that came in did increase, but it is still too close to call. My guests are sticking around, by the way, and I appreciate that. We're going to go live to DeKalb County in Georgia. Priscilla Thompson's there. This, as you've been hearing about, is a crucial county tonight. We're going to take a quick break, but our live